Welcome to Crossdressing Stories. Here, we share personal stories, celebrate self-expression. If you're on your own journey or simply curious, you've found your community. Subscribe and join the conversation.
Ethan, sweetheart, I bought you the most adorable sundress for your first day at Lincoln High. I think the floral pattern will look stunning with your complexion. I froze, the half-eaten sandwich in my hand forgotten. The voice on the other end of the line was my dad's. Dr. Richard Parker. A man whose mind was so full of ancient pottery shards and Mesopotamian trade routes that he sometimes forgot simple things, like my age or the fact that I preferred pizzas to tacos. But this was a whole new level of absent-minded. A sundress I finally managed, my voice a squeak. Dad, are you feeling okay? Did you hit your head on a sarcophagus again? He chuckled, a dry, dusty sound that always reminded me of old libraries. Very funny. No, I'm fine. Just excited for you. It's a big move, a new start. Vivian helped me pick it out over FaceTime. She has impeccable taste. Vivian, Aunt Vivian. A name that existed only in Christmas cards and my dad's occasional anecdotes. She was some distant cousin of his, living in a place called Portland, Maine, a state I only knew from horror novels and pictures of lighthouses. I was currently in a temporary state of limbo myself, living in my dad's sterile faculty apartment in Boston. We'd moved here from Chicago 3 months ago. Right after the divorce was finalized, Mom stayed in our old house, the one with the creaky porch swing and the scuff marks on the wall where I'd measured my height since I was 5. Dad got me. It wasn't a custody battle. It was more like a division of assets. Mom got the house. Dad got the kid. He was a professor of archaeology at Boston University, which sounded way more exciting than it was. Mostly it meant he was surrounded by books and was gone for weeks at a time on digs, leaving me to navigate a new city with a transit card and a list of emergency numbers. I felt like an artifact he'd unearthed and didn't quite know how to display. Dad, I said slowly, trying to process the sundress comment. Why would Aunt Vivian be helping you buy me clothes for a school in Boston? There was a pause on the other end of the line. A long, heavy pause that I already knew meant bad news. Ah, he said, right. That's actually the main reason I'm calling. Ethan. Son, there's been a change of plans. My stomach dropped. What kind of change? I've been offered the lead on the Tel El Fama excavation in Egypt. It's a huge opportunity, the kind that comes once in a career. I'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe longer. I didn't say anything. I just stared at the blank wall of my temporary bedroom. 6 months. He'd been in Boston for 3, and now he was leaving for 6. The math wasn't hard. He was choosing ancient ruins over his own son. Again. So you're just leaving? I asked. My voice flat. I have to. Ethan, this is my work. But I've made arrangements. You'll be staying with Vivian and her partner, Margaret, in Portland. It's all set up. I've already enrolled you in the local high school, Lincoln High. It's a wonderful school, great arts program. Portland. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. I don't know anyone in Portland. I barely know anyone in Boston. I don't want to move again. It's not forever, he said, his voice taking on that patient, placating tone he used when explaining things to undergrads. It's just until I get back. Their house is beautiful. Right on the coast in Cape Elizabeth. You'll love it. Fresh sea air. Quiet. A good place to focus on your studies. He didn't get it. He never did. I didn't want fresh sea air. I wanted my friends back in Chicago. I wanted my mom. I wanted a dad who didn't look at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. I don't have a choice. Do I? I said, not really. Son, I'm sorry. My flight is in 2 days. Your bus ticket to Portland is for tomorrow morning. I've emailed you all the details, including the school registration forms I filled out. That was that. Decision made. My life. Packed up and redirected like a piece of mail. We talked for a few more minutes, him telling me about the historical significance of the dig, me making non-committal noises before he hung up. I had to ask, "Dad, about the sundress, was that a joke?" "What? Oh, that? No, of course not. Just a little welcome gift from Vivian. She's very thoughtful. She said something about it being perfect for your first day. Anyway, I have to run. I love you. Son, be good for them." The line went dead. I sat in the silence, the phone heavy in my hand. I pulled up the email he'd sent. There it was, a Greyhound bus confirmation, an address in Cape Elizabeth, and a scanned copy of my registration for Lincoln High. I squinted at the form. It was a standard digital document, but the copy of my birth certificate he'd attached was blurry, a photo taken in bad light. My signature was a messy scrawl. I noticed a field labeled Preferred Name. He'd just put E. Parker. He was always abbreviating things. He'd probably been in a rush. Thinking about artifacts and forgetting his own child's name was Ethan, not just an initial. The gender box was checked, but the check mark was faint, hovering somewhere between M and F. A classic, sloppy, dad-in-a-hurry job. I didn't think anything of it at the time. It was just another piece of careless paperwork in a life that suddenly felt like it was being managed by a well-meaning but incompetent stranger. I closed the laptop. My appetite gone. A sundress. It had to be a mistake. A weird, tone-deaf joke. It had to be. The next morning, I packed a single duffel bag with the few things that felt like mine and took a taxi to the bus station. Boston was just starting to feel vaguely familiar, and now I was leaving it for a postcard town in Maine. The bus was old, smelling of stale air freshener and disinfectant. I found a window seat and watched the city blur past. My reflection a ghostly, unhappy stranger superimposed over the landscape. Across the aisle, a girl about my age was chatting on her phone. She was wearing a simple, pale yellow sundress with little white flowers on it. Her legs were crossed, and she gestured with one hand as she talked, her bracelets jingling softly. She looked so comfortable, so effortlessly herself. I found myself staring, not at her, but at the dress. It looked so simple, just a piece of fabric, but it dictated how she sat, how she moved. Fashion for girls seemed like a complicated language, full of rules and nuances I couldn't even begin to understand. I looked down at my own outfit, baggy jeans and a faded band t-shirt. It wasn't a choice. It was a uniform, a way to be invisible. I put in my earbuds, leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, and let the rumble of the engine carry me away from everything I knew, toward a future I didn't want. The bus drove north, into the darkening evening, and with every mile, I felt more and more like I was leaving myself behind. The Portland Greyhound terminal was smaller and quieter than I expected. A humble brick building that smelled of salt and diesel. As I stepped off the bus, the evening air was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to Boston's humid blanket. It carried the faint, briny scent of the ocean. For a moment, I just stood there, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder, feeling completely and utterly alone. Then, a voice cut through the quiet. Ethan Parker. I turned to see two women walking toward me. One was tall and slender with a chic, short haircut of silver hair. She wore pressed khaki pants and a navy blue cashmere sweater, looking like she'd just stepped out of a coastal living magazine. The other was shorter, rounder, with a messy bob of reddish-brown hair. She was dressed in a flowy, bohemian-style tunic, a colourful silk scarf wrapped around her neck, and a collection of silver bracelets that chimed softly as she moved. The tall one smiled, a polite, measured expression. "I'm Vivian. And this is Margaret. It's so lovely to finally meet you in person." "Hi," I mumbled, feeling clumsy and oversized next to her elegance. Margaret's smile was warmer, crinkling the corners of her eyes. She stepped forward and gave me a surprisingly strong hug. "Welcome to Maine. Sweetie. We're so glad you're here. You must be exhausted after that long bus ride." Her embrace was comforting, smelling of spices and something floral, like lavender. But as she pulled back, I saw the way her eyes and Vivian's met for a fraction of a second. It was a quick, silent exchange, and in it, I felt a strange sense of being assessed, sized up. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. We walked to their car, a clean, practical Subaru parked under a flickering street lamp. The drive to their home in Cape Elizabeth was quiet at first. We wound through the charming, brick-lined streets of Portland and then crossed a bridge, the city lights glittering on the dark water below. Soon, the houses grew larger, set further back from the road, surrounded by old, sprawling trees. Their house was a beautifully restored Victorian, painted a soft grey with white trim, perched on a small bluff overlooking the ocean, even in the dark. I could hear the rhythmic sigh of the waves washing against the shore. It was the kind of house people dream about, but to me, it felt like a beautiful, unfamiliar cage. Inside, the house was just as perfect. It was decorated in a style I'd later learn was called coastal chic, all whites and pale blues, with weathered wood furniture, nautical maps on the walls, and bowls of sea glass on the tables. It was immaculate. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the left," Vivian said, pointing up a polished wooden staircase. "Go on up and get settled. Dinner will be ready in about half an hour." My room was lovely. A large window looked out over the dark expanse of the ocean. The bed was covered in a soft white comforter, and the furniture was all painted a calming pastel blue. It was clean, comfortable, and completely impersonal. It felt like a guest room in a high-end bed and breakfast, not a teenager's bedroom. I dropped my duffel bag on the floor and opened the closet, intending to hang up the few shirts I'd brought. To my surprise, the closet wasn't empty. There were already clothes hanging there. Not many, but a few pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, and a couple of sweaters. I pulled out a pair of the jeans. They were a light, faded denim, cut in a style much slimmer than I was used to, a skinny fit, and the t-shirts were all soft, fitted, in colors like seafoam green and pale yellow. They looked like something a girl might wear, but they were simple enough to be unisex. I told myself, it was just the preppy, coastal Maine style, nothing to worry about. Dinner was baked salmon with roasted asparagus and quinoa. Margaret was an amazing cook, and the food was delicious, but I could barely eat. The conversation felt stilted. A series of questions and one-word answers. They asked about my dad, about Chicago, about my hobbies. I told them I liked to draw and play video games. Then, Vivian steered the conversation towards school. "So, Ethan, or do you prefer E?" she asked, her eyes twinkling with something I couldn't read. "Just Ethan is fine," I said quickly. Margaret chimed in, dabbing her mouth with a cloth napkin. "The school called earlier. They mentioned some paperwork confusion. But don't worry, sweetie, we'll get it all sorted out on orientation day. It's nothing to fret about." I felt a small knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach, but I nodded. A paperwork confusion. That sounded about right, given my dad's attention to detail. After dinner, Vivian showed me to the bathroom, like the rest of the house. It was spotless, filled with white towels and scented soaps. I noticed immediately that all the products on the counter and in the shower were distinctly fragrant. There was jasmine body wash, lavender shampoo, and a rose-scented conditioner. There was no bar of unscented soap, no bottle of generic men's body wash. It was a small thing, but it felt significant. I took a long, hot shower, the floral scents blooming in the steam. The soap left my skin feeling softer than usual, and the smell clung to me, a foreign but not unpleasant aroma. When I got out, I realized I hadn't packed my pajamas. I wrapped a towel around my waist and padded back to my room, hoping Vivian and Margaret were still downstairs. On the bed, laid out neatly, was a set of pajamas. They must have left them for me while I was in the shower. They were made of a soft, thin cotton, a pale grey colour. The top was a simple long-sleeved shirt, and the bottoms were loose-fitting pants. I put them on. The fabric was incredibly soft against my clean skin, much lighter and more comfortable than the thick flannel pants I usually wore. But again, there was that subtle difference. The cut was a little narrower, the fit a little closer to the body. It wasn't a boy's pajama set. It wasn't quite a girl's set, either. It was somewhere in between. Lying in bed that night, I could hear the waves crashing on the shore, a constant, soothing rhythm. I tried to empty my mind, but it was a whirlwind of thoughts. A new house, a new school, two strange women who were kind but unreadable, and a closet full of clothes that didn't feel like mine. I told myself I was overthinking it. This was just a different lifestyle. Coastal living. That's all it was. It didn't mean anything. But as I drifted off into an uneasy sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was a puzzle piece that had been forced into the wrong box, and that soon. Everyone was going to notice that I didn't quite fit. The first sign that the day was going to be a disaster came at 7 a.m. in the form of a gentle knock on my door. "Good morning, sweetheart," Margaret's cheerful voice called from the hallway. "Big day today. I left some clothes on the chair for you. First impressions. Matter at a new school." I mumbled a sleepy thanks and rolled over, pulling the soft comforter over my head. My sleep had been fragmented, filled with anxious dreams of being lost in endless hallways. I finally dragged myself out of bed, my eyes still blurry. On the armchair in the corner of the room, there was a neatly folded pile of clothes. I shuffled over, still half asleep, and picked them up. My brain took a moment to register what I was holding. It was a sundress, a floral, pastel-coloured sundress, the exact one my dad had mentioned on the phone. Underneath it was a set of plain white underwear, a small pair of briefs, and something that looked like a training bra, and a pair of simple, nude-coloured flat sandals. I stood there, completely motionless, the soft cotton of the dress in my hands. This had to be a mistake. A joke. A really, really weird joke. My heart started to beat a little faster. I dropped the clothes back on the chair as if they were hot and pulled on the pajamas from the night before. I had to clear this up. Now. I found Vivian in the kitchen, calmly reading a newspaper and sipping a cup of tea. She looked up and smiled when I walked in. "Good morning, Ethan. Did you sleep well?" I held up the dress. "Aunt Vivian, I think there's been a mistake. These are girls' clothes." She looked at the dress, then back at me, her expression one of polite confusion. "What do you mean?" "Honey, those are the clothes I picked out for you. The school dress code allows for dresses, and I thought you'd look lovely." My mind reeled. "But I'm a boy," I said, the words feeling stupid and obvious as they left my mouth. "I wear boys' clothes." Vivian and Margaret, who had just entered from the porch with a basket of fresh herbs, exchanged that same unreadable look from the night before. "Sweetie," Margaret said, her voice gentle, "the school registration says female. We assumed." Are you saying there was an error? My blood ran cold. The blurry form, the faint checkmark, my dad's sloppiness. It all clicked into place in the most horrifying way possible. Yes. An error, I said, my voice rising in panic. My dad must have messed it up. I'm a boy. My name is Ethan. Vivian calmly retrieved a folder from a nearby counter and pulled out the registration papers. She frowned as she read them. Well, It does seem rather ambiguous, but the school office processed it as female. We have to call them. I pleaded. We have to fix this before I go. Vivian picked up the phone. I stood there, wringing my hands, listening to her side of the conversation. It was not going well. Yes. I understand it's orientation day. I see. No, we don't have the original birth certificate with us. Next week. She sighed and hung up the phone, her lips pressed into a thin line. Well, she said. That was unhelpful. The office is swamped. The receptionist said we can't change official records without the proper documentation in person. We'll need to bring your birth certificate and fill out a series of correction forms. The earliest they can schedule an appointment is next Tuesday. Next Tuesday I felt sick, but school starts today. I can't go in like this. Okay, here's what we'll do, Vivian said, her tone shifting to practical and decisive. Just for today, you go to school with whatever paperwork they have. Wear something neutral. We'll go to the office first thing tomorrow morning and get this straightened out. It's just one day. Something neutral. The words were a lifeline. I nodded, relieved. I could do neutral. I could survive one day of being misidentified on paper as long as I looked like myself. I raced back upstairs to my room and threw open the closet, and my heart sank. There was nothing neutral. The closet was filled only with the clothes Margaret had bought. The skinny jeans in pastel colors, the fitted t-shirts, a few more sweaters, and, hanging in the very front, the sundress. I frantically checked the drawers. No boxers. No loose-fitting shirts. Nothing that resembled my old wardrobe. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. I was trapped. I went back downstairs. Defeated. There's nothing. Nothing that looks like boys' clothes. Margaret gave me a sympathetic look. How about this, she suggested kindly. Wear the jeans and a simple t-shirt. They're unisex enough. Lots of kids wear that style these days. It wasn't a choice. It was the only option I had. I trudged back upstairs. My shoulders slumped. Back in my room, I stood in front of the clothes, feeling a profound sense of dread. This was really happening. I was going to have to wear this. Slowly, reluctantly. I took off my pajamas. I picked up the underwear first. It was made of a soft, stretchy cotton. The briefs felt unnervingly small and delicate in my hands. I stepped into them. The fabric was smooth against my skin, the elastic band sitting low on my hips in a way that felt completely foreign. It was so much less substantial than the boxers I was used to. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Next came the jeans. They were a light blue wash, made of a soft, stretchy denim. I had to pull them up slowly over my legs. They were tight, hugging my thighs and backside in a way that made me intensely aware of the shape of my own body. The feeling of the fabric clinging to every curve was claustrophobic. Finally, the t-shirt. It was a soft cotton in a pale lavender color, with a small breast pocket. The cut was fitted, tapering slightly at the waist and hugging my shoulders. It made my frame look smaller, my shoulders narrower. I forced myself to look in the mirror. The person staring back was different. It wasn't exactly a girl, but it wasn't the Ethan I knew either. The fitted clothes changed my silhouette entirely. I looked softer, slighter. My face, which I'd always thought was just ordinary, seemed more delicate above the soft lavender shirt. My hair, which had grown a bit long over the summer, fell over my forehead in a way that suddenly looked less shaggy and more styled. My face burned with embarrassment. The sensation of the clothes was a constant distraction. The way the jeans stretched when I bent my knee, the way the t-shirt settled against my ribs, it was a constant, low-level hum of physical discomfort and profound self-consciousness. But underneath the panic, there was another feeling, a tiny, confusing flicker of something else, a whisper of curiosity. I pushed it down, hard. Margaret drove me to school. She tried to make small talk, but I could only stare out the window, my hands clenched into fists in my lap. "You look perfectly fine, honey," she said, sensing my anxiety. "Very put together. Actually, no one will think twice." As we pulled up to Lincoln High, I saw that she was. To some extent, right. The students milling around outside were dressed in all sorts of styles. Some girls wore baggy jeans. Some boys wore tight ones. Fashion was more fluid than I had realized. It was a small comfort, but the knot in my stomach remained. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. "Text me if you need anything. Remember, we'll fix the paperwork tomorrow. Just get through today." I nodded, unable to speak. I got out of the car, feeling the eyes of 1,000 strangers on me, even though no one was actually looking. I took a deep breath, the cool Maine air doing little to calm my racing heart, and walked toward the front doors of my new school, dressed as someone I didn't recognize. The first stop was the school office to check in. It was a chaotic swirl of students, parents, and ringing phones. I stood in line, clutching the papers Vivian had given me, my heart hammering against my ribs. When it was finally my turn, a harried-looking secretary with glasses perched on her nose took my folder without looking up. "Welcome to Lincoln High. Let me find your file." "Ah, yes, Parker." She tapped a few keys on her computer. "Pamela Parker. Correct." The name hit me like a splash of cold water. Pamela. They thought I was a girl named Pamela. Actually, "It's Ethan," I started to say, but she was already talking over me, grabbing a stack of papers from a printer. "Great. Pam, here's your schedule, your locker number, and a map of the campus. Your student ID will be ready to pick up at lunch. Have a great first day." She stamped a paper and shouted, "Next." I was dismissed. I stood there, frozen, holding a schedule with a stranger's name on it, Pam Parker, grade 10, F. My first class was homeroom. I found the classroom and slipped into an empty seat in the back, trying to make myself as small as possible. The teacher, a cheerful woman named Ms. Albright, started taking attendance. My stomach twisted into a knot. "Pamela Parker," she called out. The whole class went quiet. Everyone was looking around, waiting. I felt a hot flush creep up my neck. I had to say something. I raised a tentative hand. "Here," I mumbled, "but I go by Ethan." "Ms. Albright smiled warmly. "Oh, a nickname. That's fine, dear. I'll make a note of it. Class, this is Pam. She's new, all the way from Chicago. Let's make her feel welcome." A few students turned to look at me and offered small, friendly smiles. They saw a girl named Pam who wanted to be called Ethan. It was a quirky nickname, not a gender correction. My attempt to fix things had only cemented the misunderstanding. I sank lower in my seat, defeated. The girl sitting next to me leaned over. She had a riot of curly brown hair and a smile that lit up her whole face. "Hi, Pam. I'm Zoe. Welcome to Lincoln. I love your outfit. Where'd you get those jeans?" Thanks," I stammered, caught off guard by her friendliness. "My aunt bought them." "Your aunt has great taste," she said. "Hey, do you want to sit with me and my friends at lunch? We can show you the ropes." I nodded, grateful for the lifeline. Maybe this day wouldn't be a total nightmare. But then came the bathroom dilemma. After homeroom, I really had to go. I found myself standing in a hallway, staring at two doors, one marked men's and the other women's. I had a full-blown panic attack right there in the middle of the hall. Which one was I supposed to use? My brain screamed men's. But my clothes, my school records. A group of girls walked past me and went into the women's room. One of them smiled at me and said, "You coming?" I stood there, frozen. I couldn't. I finally darted into the men's room. Two younger boys were at the sinks, and they both stopped and stared at me. Wrong bathroom," one of them asked, looking me up and down. I saw myself through their eyes, the lavender shirt, the tight jeans, the softer haircut. They didn't see a boy. They saw a girl who had wandered into the wrong place. "No!" I started, but the words died in my throat. I turned and fled, my face burning with a shame so intense it felt like a physical blow. My heart was pounding. I took a few deep breaths and, with no other choice, slipped into the women's room. I kept my head down, went straight into a stall, and locked the door. I didn't make eye contact with anyone. It was mortifying, but at least no one questioned my presence. The next disaster was physical education. My schedule directed me to the girls' gym. The coach, a stern-looking woman named Miss Morrison, checked her clipboard as I approached. "Okay, Pam, welcome. We're starting our volleyball unit today. The locker room is through that door. You can change into your gym uniform." "I think there's been a mistake," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I should be in the boys' PE class." She glanced down at her list. "Says here you're registered for this section. If there's a scheduling issue, you'll have to take it up with your counselor. For today, you can either join us or sit on the sidelines." There was no way I was going into a girls' locker room. I chose to sit out. I spent the period on the bleachers, watching the girls play volleyball. They were laughing and shouting, their ponytails swinging as they jumped and served. Zoe was on one of the teams. She spotted me and waved, mouthing, "You okay?" I just gave her a weak thumbs up. Lunch was a small reprieve. Zoe found me and introduced me to her friends Aisha, who was tall and athletic, Lily, a quiet, artistic girl who was sketching in a notebook, and Sophie, who was bubbly and fashionable. They were all incredibly welcoming. "So Pam, do you play any sports?" Sophie asked. "You should totally try out for volleyball. Coach Morrison loves new players." The conversation flowed around me, covering TV shows, music, and plans for the weekend. They included me in their gossip, asked for my opinions. They were treating me like one of them, like a girl. And the strange part was it felt nice. It was an easy, comfortable camaraderie that I'd never really experienced with the groups of guys I'd hung out with back in Chicago. I knew I had to tell them the truth. This couldn't go on. Guys, I said, my voice barely a whisper. "There's something I should tell you." They all looked at me expectantly. Lily put down her pencil. "What's up?" My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. The thing is, I looked at their open, friendly faces, and the words caught in my throat. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bear to see their expressions change from acceptance to confusion, or, worse, disgust. I chickened out. I'm actually not from Chicago originally. My family moved around a lot. They bought it completely. "Oh, cool. Where else have you lived?" Lily asked, and the moment passed. My afternoon classes were a blur, until chemistry. The teacher assigned lab partners, and I was paired with a boy named Ryan. He was tall, with sandy blonde hair and a friendly, easygoing smile. "Hey, I'm Ryan," he said, pulling a stool up to our lab table. "Want to be partners?" "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. As we worked on the experiment, we started talking about music. It turned out we both loved the same indie bands. He was easy to talk to, funny and smart. Toward the end of the class, he leaned a little closer. "There's a concert down at the waterfront next week," he said, his voice a little lower. "A bunch of local bands are playing. You should come. I mean, if you want. With me, or, our group of friends. It took me a second to realize what was happening. He was flirting with me. He was asking me out, in a clumsy high school sort of way. A boy was flirting with Pam. I felt my face get hot, and a strange fluttery feeling erupted in my stomach. It was confusing and terrifying and, to my absolute shock, a little bit thrilling. No one had ever looked at me like that before. When Margaret picked me up after school, she took one look at my face and asked, "How was your first day?" I slumped into the seat, completely exhausted. "Complicated," I said. On the ride home, I told her everything: the name Pamela, the bathroom incident, the girls, Ryan. She listened patiently, a small, sympathetic smile on her face. "Oh, honey," she said when I finished, "that sounds like a lot. Well, tomorrow we will go down to that office and straighten everything out. I promise. For tonight, let's just relax. Vivian is making her famous clam chowder." That evening, after dinner, I stood in front of the mirror in my room, still wearing the lavender shirt and skinny jeans. I looked at my reflection for a long time. I reached up and pushed my hair back from my forehead, then let it fall forward again. It was long enough now that it brushed my eyebrows. On a whim, I parted it differently, letting it swoop to the side. The change was small, but significant. With my hair styled that way, my face looked prettier, softer. I could pass as a girl. I realized with a jolt, everyone at school today had believed it without a single question. The thought was deeply disturbing, but there was another part of me, a part I didn't want to acknowledge. That was curious. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Zoe. "Hey Pam, had fun today. See you tomorrow." I stared at the little pink heart emoji. Pam. They all thought I was Pam. And for one whole, complicated, terrifying day, I had been. I woke up the next morning with a singular mission: fix the paperwork. I was dressed and downstairs by 7, ready to go to the school and end this nightmare. But of course, life had other plans. Margaret was on the phone, her face etched with worry. "I'm so sorry. I have to go in," she was saying. "Yes, it's an emergency board meeting. I'll be there as soon as I can." She hung up and looked at me apologetically. "Honey, I'm so sorry. Something's come up at the gallery. I have to go into work right away." Vivian appeared, already dressed, holding a car key. "Don't worry about it. Margaret, I can take him, her to school." She turned to me. "I can take you to the administration office after school." "Sweetie, will you be okay going one more day like this?" My shoulders sagged. I guess I have no choice. Resigned to my fate, I went back upstairs to get dressed. I opened the closet to find the jeans and t-shirt from yesterday, and I noticed something new. Margaret must have gone shopping. There were several new items hanging there: a simple, navy blue A-line skirt, a few more fitted tops in different colors, and a cozy-looking cream-colored cardigan. I opened a drawer to look for socks, and my eyes widened. There was more. Neatly folded were several new pairs of underwear, some plain, some with a little bit of lace trim, and next to them, bras. Simple, cotton training bras with light padding. There was even a little note from Margaret propped up against a stack of knee-high socks. Picked these up yesterday. Thought you might need more options. M. I stared at the contents of the drawer. More options. This wasn't just a temporary wardrobe for a mix-up. This felt intentional. This felt like encouragement. A strange thought entered my head. Everyone at school already thinks I'm a girl. They all know me as Pam. Wearing jeans and a t-shirt yesterday didn't stop that. Maybe it would be easier to just lean into it for today, to just blend in. Fighting it was exhausting. Before I could second-guess myself, I made a decision. I picked out the navy skirt, a plain white fitted t-shirt, and the cream cardigan. Then I turned to the underwear drawer. My hand hovered over the bras. The idea was mortifying, but the memory of how my fitted shirt from yesterday had clung to my flat chest was even more so. I picked up one of the bras. It was soft and simple. I put it on, fumbling with the clasp in the back until I finally got it. The band was snug around my ribs, and the padded cups created a subtle, smooth curve under the t-shirt. It felt strange, constricting, but also like a layer of armor. Then came the skirt. I stepped into it and zipped it up at the side. The fabric was light and fell to about mid-thigh. I took a tentative step, and the skirt swished against my legs. It was an entirely new sensation. The air moving against my skin was so different from the feeling of wearing pants. It felt incredibly exposed, but also, in a weird way, liberating. Margaret had even included a pair of sheer tights. I put them on, the smooth, slightly constrictive fabric feeling warm and strange against my legs. I looked in the full-length mirror, and my breath caught in my throat. The person staring back at me wasn't just an awkward boy in feminine clothes anymore. The skirt, the cardigan, the way the bra gave my chest a slight shape. It all worked together, with my shoulder-length hair falling softly around my face. I looked like a girl. A real, convincing girl. The shock was profound. It was followed by a wave of fear, then fascination, and then a tiny, thrilling spark of something I could only describe as excitement. The reaction at school was immediate. "Pam, oh my God, you look so cute today," Sophie squealed when I met them at our lockers. "I love that skirt." Zoe nodded enthusiastically. "Right, Pam, you have to tell us where you shop. Your style is amazing." I felt my cheeks flush, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. It was from a warm, pleasant glow that spread through my chest. It was validation. No one had ever complimented my appearance before. As Ethan, I was just there, invisible, as Pam. I was being seen, and I didn't hate it. In English class, we were assigned a group project. I was put in a group with Zoe, Ryan, and another boy. Ryan made sure to sit next to me, a few times. His arm brushed against mine, and each time, a confusing little jolt went through me. At the end of class, he turned to me. "Hey, Pam, want to exchange numbers? You know, for the project." We swapped phones, and I saw that when he entered his name. He added a little smiley face emoji next to it. Gym class was another hurdle. "Pam, you joining us today?" Coach Morrison asked. "I don't have a uniform," I said, hoping it was a valid excuse. "We have extras in the lost and found. Come on." My heart hammered in my chest. I couldn't change in the locker room with them. They would see that I wasn't a girl. But when I got in there, I saw that a few of the stalls were full-length changing stalls, while the other girls chatted and changed openly. I slipped into a stall, my back pressed against the door, and changed as quickly as I could. I was given a pair of generic gym shorts and a t-shirt. The sports bra I was wearing provided enough coverage that nothing looked out of place under the shirt. To my surprise, playing volleyball was actually fun. The girls were all encouraging. Nice serve. Pam. Great pass. I felt like I was part of a team, and the feeling was exhilarating. That afternoon, Vivian picked me up. Hey, sweetie, mind if we make a quick stop at the mall? I need to pick up a few things for the house. But once we were at the mall, she didn't head for the home goods stores. Instead, she led me toward places like Forever 21 and H&M. Since you're stuck in this situation for another day, she said with a knowing smile, you might as well have some proper options. Aunt Vivian, this is just temporary, I protested weakly. I know. Honey, but humor me, she said, pulling a cute blouse off a rack. Besides, learning how to put together an outfit is a useful skill for anyone. She had me try on clothes in the fitting room. It was surreal. She'd pass items over the door dresses. Different styles of skirts. Tops. Leggings. Try this one, she'd say. That color would be lovely on you. I tried on a light blue sundress. It felt soft and airy against my bare legs. I tried on a pair of black leggings that felt like a second skin. I even tried on a slightly cropped top that showed a sliver of my stomach, feeling both self-conscious and strangely intrigued. Each time I stepped out to show her, Vivian would offer a genuine, approving smile. Oh, Pam, you look beautiful, she said, as I stood in front of the mirror in the sundress. Hearing that word beautiful directed at me was like hearing a foreign language that I suddenly understood. It sent a warm, confusing feeling through my entire body. She insisted on buying me a few skincare items and some basic makeup, just lip gloss and mascara, she said, for a natural look. On the drive home, I finally worked up the courage to ask what I'd been thinking all day. Aunt Vivian, why are you doing all this? You know this is all just a mistake. Right. I'm going to fix it. She was quiet for a moment. Her eyes on the road. Of course, she said calmly. But Pam or Ethan, whichever you prefer, I want you to know something. Life sometimes puts us in unexpected situations. How we respond is what defines us. You could fight this every step of the way, make yourself miserable and isolated. Or you could stay open, make the best of it, and maybe learn something new about yourself. Learn what I asked. That identity is more fluid than we think, that trying on different roles doesn't diminish who we are. It expands us. A suspicion that had been growing in the back of my mind finally surfaced. Did you and Margaret know from the beginning that the paperwork was wrong? Vivian gave a long, slow sigh. She didn't look at me. Let's just say, she said, her voice soft. Margaret and I have lived long enough to recognize when someone might need a gentle push to explore the parts of themselves they're afraid to acknowledge. That night, after dinner, Margaret found me sitting on the back porch, watching the last sliver of sun sink into the ocean. Vivian told me you had a good day, she said, sitting next to me. It was okay. I said, it's still weird. It feels like I'm pretending. Lying to everyone. Are you pretending, she asked gently, or are you just trying on a different version of yourself? Is there a difference? I think so, she said. Pretending implies that it's false. But what if it isn't? What if it's just another facet of who you can be? What if Pam is just as real as Ethan? She took a deep breath. You know, I transitioned when I was in my 30s. Back then, it was so much harder. I lost my family, my job. I lost almost everything. But I gained myself. And that was worth it. I stared at her, my mind blank with shock. You're trans. She nodded, her expression serene. And so is Vivian. We found each other later in life, two people who understood the journey. The entire world shifted on its axis. Everything, the clothes, the gentle encouragement, Vivian's words in the car, it all snapped into focus. "Is that why you're doing this?" I whispered, pushing me into this. "We're not pushing." "Honey," she said, her voice full of a kindness that made my eyes well up. "We're offering a safe space to explore. Your father called us because he knew, on some level, that you might need this. He saw how uncomfortable you've seemed in your own skin. He didn't want to force anything, but he wanted you to be somewhere safe, somewhere you could figure things out without judgment. My dad knew he had sent me here on purpose." Later, alone in my room, surrounded by shopping bags filled with girls' clothes, I felt completely overwhelmed. I opened my laptop and, with trembling fingers, typed a phrase I'd never dared to search before. What does it mean to be transgender? I read stories and articles for hours. One sentence from a forum post jumped out at me. Gender dysphoria isn't always a loud, violent hatred of your body. Sometimes it's just a quiet, constant discomfort, a lifelong feeling that something doesn't quite fit. A quiet, constant discomfort. That was it. That was the feeling I'd had for as long as I could remember. The feeling of being Ethan Parker. Was this what it was? Was Pam, this strange new person I was becoming? The answer to a question I had been too afraid to even ask. The plan to fix the paperwork kept getting mysteriously delayed. First, the school needed a notarized copy of my birth certificate, which my dad had to mail from an army base in the Middle East. Then, the one person in the administration office who could handle gender marker corrections went on vacation. Week after week, there was a new excuse. I suspected Vivian and Margaret were orchestrating some of it. But by then, a surprising thing had happened. I had stopped fighting it. Living as Pam had become my new normal. My wardrobe was now entirely feminine. A colorful collection of skirts, dresses, cute tops, and jeans that actually fit my slim frame. I'd even developed a morning routine. I'd shower with my now favorite jasmine body wash. Margaret had gently taught me how to shave my legs, and I had to admit, the feeling of smooth skin under a pair of soft tights or against clean bed sheets was surprisingly pleasant. I'd choose an outfit, do my hair, and apply a little bit of makeup, just a touch of foundation to even out my skin. A swipe of mascara to make my eyes look bigger, and a slick of tinted lip gloss. Looking in the mirror each morning was becoming less of a shock and more of a confirmation. The face looking back at me was still mine, but it was softer, prettier. This was Pam, and I was starting to think that Pam was me. My social life had blossomed in a way I'd never thought possible. Zoe, Aisha, Lily, and Sophie had become my best friends. We were inseparable. We had study sessions at the library that always devolved into gossip sessions. We'd go to each other's houses, paint our nails, and watch cheesy rom-coms. One afternoon at Zoe's house, she decided we should do makeovers. Sophie did my eye makeup, her touch gentle as she applied eyeshadow. "Close your eyes," she'd murmured. "You have such pretty lashes." Pam. It was an easy, casual intimacy I'd never experienced before, and I soaked it in like a plant starved for sunlight. I felt like I finally belonged somewhere. Meanwhile, my situation with Ryan was getting more intense. He would wait for me by my locker in the mornings and walk me to my first class. At lunch, he'd bring his friends over to our table, and our two groups started merging. We texted every night. The conversations shifting from homework and music to more personal things, our families, our dreams, our fears. One afternoon, he caught me as I was leaving school. "Hey, Pam," he said, looking a little nervous. "Want to grab a coffee?" It was my first ever quasi-date. We went to a small cafe downtown and talked for over an hour. "You're really easy to talk to," he said, stirring his latte. You're different from other girls. Different, how I asked, my heart doing a little flip. I don't know, more real. I guess less drama. A pang of guilt shot through me. I wasn't being real at all. I was living a massive lie. Or was I? This, right here, talking to him, feeling this connection. This felt more real than anything had in my entire life. He walked me to the corner where Margaret usually picked me up. The autumn air was crisp, and colourful leaves drifted down around us. We stopped under a tree, and there was a moment of awkward, charged silence. I really like you, Pam, he said softly. And then he leaned in and kissed me. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, then more confident. His hand came up to gently rest on my waist, and my entire body felt like it was buzzing. I felt small and delicate and safe in his arms. My mind was a chaotic mess. I'm a boy. I'm kissing a boy. But it didn't feel like two boys kissing. It felt right. It felt like I was a girl, being kissed by a boy who liked her. I kissed him back, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the autumn sun. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. So, he said, his voice a little shaky. Are we a thing? Yeah, I breathed. We are. That night, I couldn't sleep. The kiss replayed in my mind over and over. I finally got up and went downstairs. Margaret was in the living room, reading by the light of a single lamp. Margaret, I said, my voice trembling. I kissed a boy today. She looked up from her book, a gentle smile touching her lips. And how did that feel? Confusing. I whispered, and good, and scary. I liked it. But I'm supposed to be a boy. Boys don't. I mean, they do. But it doesn't feel like that. You're right, she said softly. What you're describing isn't that, is it? Tears started to well up in my eyes, tears of confusion and relief. I don't know what I am anymore. When I look in the mirror, I see Pam. When Ryan looks at me, he sees Pam. My friends see Pam. And I think I'm starting to see Pam, too. Margaret set her book aside and gave me her full attention. Then maybe Pam is who you were all along, she said. Maybe Ethan was the costume. The tears finally fell, silent and hot down my cheeks. But what does that mean? That I'm trans. That I'm really a girl. It means you're you, she said, her voice filled with a deep, unwavering kindness. The labels can come later. Right now, just allow yourself to feel what you feel. A few days later, it was time for my scheduled video call with my dad. I was terrified. He hadn't seen me in months. Now, he would see my longer hair, the subtle makeup I wore, the feminine cut of my sweater. His face appeared on the screen, tan and weathered from the desert sun. He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. So, he said, his voice surprisingly calm, the paperwork situation still isn't fixed. I take it. My heart was pounding. Dad, I said, taking a deep breath. I need to tell you something. I told him everything, about the clothes, about the name, about my friends, about Ryan. I told him how wrong it had felt at first, and how, slowly, terrifyingly, it had started to feel right. He listened patiently, not interrupting once. When I finished, there was a long silence. Ethan or Pam? He said finally, when you were 10 years old, you asked your mother if you could dress up as a princess for Halloween. She laughed it off and bought you a superhero costume instead. But I saw the look on your face, the disappointment. I was stunned. I don't remember that. You probably blocked it out. He said, but I remembered. I've watched you struggle to be comfortable in your own skin for years. When this opportunity came up, to send you to Vivian and Margaret, I knew they could offer you something I couldn't. A safe space to figure things out. You planned this. I didn't plan the paperwork mix-up, he admitted, but I can't say I rushed to fix it. Either. I wanted you to have this chance. Are you angry with me? I thought about it, wiping tears from my eyes. I don't know. Maybe a little. But also, maybe I'm grateful. You don't have to have all the answers right now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Just know that I love you. Ethan, Pam, whoever you are, or become, always. That conversation felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know was there. It was permission. Permission to be myself. The school announced the homecoming dance. Immediately. My friends started buzzing with excitement. Pam, Ryan is totally going to ask you, Sophie declared. The thought sent a jolt of panic and excitement through me. A dance meant a dress. A real, formal dress. It meant going out in public. With a date. As a girl. We should all go dress shopping together this weekend, Zoe announced. That Saturday, the 5 of us went to the mall. We ended up in a formal wear shop filled with a rainbow of satin, tulle, and sequins. It was overwhelming. In the fitting room, I tried on dress after dress. A red one was too tight. A blue one was pretty but boring. Then, Lily handed me a dress from the rack. It was a beautiful lavender color, with a simple, fitted bodice and a tea-length skirt made of layers of soft tulle. I put it on and stepped out of the fitting room. My friends all gasped. Pam, Aisha said, her voice soft with awe. That's the one. That's the dress. I turned to look at myself in the 3-way mirror. The dress was perfect. It made me look graceful and delicate. The color brought out the highlights in my hair, and the full skirt made me want to twirl. I looked like a princess, the princess that 10-year-old me had wanted to be for Halloween. Tears welled in my eyes. Happy tears, Lily asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak. Yeah, I finally managed to whisper. Happy tears. The following Monday, Ryan was waiting for me at my locker, holding a small bouquet of daisies. Pam, he said, his cheeks a little red. Will you go to homecoming with me? Everyone in the hallway seemed to stop and watch. I felt my own cheeks flush as a huge smile spread across my face. Yes, I said, my voice full of a joy that felt boundless. I'd love to. The day of homecoming was a flurry of activity. Margaret and Vivian were like a pair of fairy godmothers, orchestrating my entire transformation. The afternoon began with a long, luxurious bath with scented oils, followed by a meticulous process of getting ready that felt like a sacred ritual. Vivian styled my hair, pinning it up into an elegant twist with a few soft curls left to frame my face. Then Margaret sat me down at her vanity for makeup. It was far more elaborate than my daily routine. She applied primer and foundation until my skin was a flawless canvas. She used shades of lavender and silver on my eyelids to match my dress, added a delicate wing of black eyeliner, and even applied a set of false eyelashes. They felt heavy and strange on my eyelids, but when I looked in the mirror, they made my eyes look huge and dramatic. She used contouring powder to define my cheekbones and a highlight